Control that thing, or I swear. The words hung, thick with venom, just before the slap. Not on the kid, though. On Kesha. My stomach clenched, watching. Flight attendant thought she was teaching a lesson, showing who was boss. Recording phones came out, everyone assuming the same thing. Another entitled mom. They didn't see the platinum card tucked in the diaper bag, the one that shimmered for a second. Didn't hear the hushed call she declined. Skylink Airways executive office. She's a damn queen. I know. Everyone loves a good public shaming. But this felt wrong. The kind of wrong that simmers just under the surface. They had no clue. Not a single, solitary clue about the storm brewing behind Kesha's quiet eyes, or the kind of quiet kindness that's about to turn the whole damn plane upside down. The baby's cries intensified from the sudden violence. Passengers in nearby seats pulled out phones recording what they assumed was justified discipline of an unruly traveler. Finally, someone with backbone. An elderly woman in pearls whispered approvingly. Keisha's cheek burned, but her dark eyes remained steady. She adjusted baby Zoe's blanket with trembling hands, her boarding pass visible in her lap. Mrs. K. Thompson with a special gold status code that Mitchell had ignored completely. The cabin fell silent except for Zoe's soft whimpering and the click of recording phones. Have you ever been judged as a bad parent in public before anyone asked if you needed help? Mitchell straightened her navy uniform, her silver wings catching the cabin lights as she played to her audience. The slap had energized her, finally a chance to demonstrate real authority to the first-class passengers who paid premium prices. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption, Mitchell announced loudly enough for the entire cabin to hear. Some people simply don't understand appropriate travel etiquette. Murmurs of approval rippled through the cabin. A businessman in an expensive suit nodded toward Kesha. Thank God someone's maintaining standards. These people always think they can do whatever they want. Kesha remained silent, gently bouncing Zoe to calm her cries. The baby's tiny fist wrapped around her mother's finger, a gesture that should have melted hearts, but only seemed to irritate the watching passengers more. Mitchell pulled out her radio, speaking with theatrical authority. Captain Williams, we have a code yellow in first class. Disruptive passenger with infant, refusing to comply with crew instructions. The radio crackled back. Copy that, Sandra. How do you want to proceed? I'm recommending immediate removal before departure. She's already delayed us 8 minutes with this tantrum. Kesha glanced at her phone. The screen showed 14 minutes until departure, and below that, a text notification. Corporate legal merger announcement scheduled for 2 p.m. EST. All systems ready. She tucked the phone away before Mitchell could read the message clearly. Excuse me, Kesha said quietly, her voice barely audible over the cabin noise. My ticket shows seat 2A. I paid for first-class service, and I'd appreciate. Mitchell cut her off with a harsh laugh. Honey, I don't care what scam you pulled to get that ticket. People like you always try to upgrade illegally. I know every trick in the book. A young woman across the aisle, maybe college-aged, held up her phone filming a TikTok. Y'all, this is insane. This flight attendant just slapped a mom with a baby? I can't even. Her viewer count was climbing. 847, 123, 3456. But the comments weren't supporting Kesha. They were harsh, judgmental. Finally, someone disciplining bad parents. Why can't people control their kids on flights? That mom looks entitled AF. Flight attendant is a hero. Mitchell noticed the filming and played up her role. Ma'am, if you can't manage your child appropriately, I have every right to request your removal from this aircraft. Airline policy is very clear about disruptive passengers. Kesha opened her carry-on bag to retrieve baby formula. As she did, a flash of platinum caught the light. An airline executive card tucked between diapers and bottles. The card was quickly hidden again, but something about its design seemed different from standard frequent flyer cards. Her phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID was visible to nearby passengers. Skylink Airways executive office. She declined the call. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. Who exactly do you think you're calling? Your baby daddy isn't going to save you from federal aviation regulations. The insult hit like another slap. Several passengers chuckled. The businessman with the expensive suit spoke up. Miss, you're holding up 180 passengers with this drama. Some of us have important business to attend to. 12 minutes until mandatory departure. Captain Williams' voice echoed over the intercom. Flight crew, please prepare for final boarding completion. Kesha checked her watch. A simple black timepiece, nothing flashy, but if someone looked closely, they might notice the engraving on the back. To my brilliant wife, MT, the Mitchell was building to her crescendo. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one final time to gather your belongings and detain voluntarily. If you refuse, I'll have federal air marshals escort you off this aircraft. The TikTok live stream hit 8,000 viewers. Comments flooded in faster than the college student could read them, but buried among the harsh judgment were a few different voices. Something's not right here. Why is the mom so calm? That lady seems way too composed. Flight attendant is way too aggressive. A business passenger near the window opened his laptop and began typing rapidly on an aviation industry forum. His post was titled, Witnessing Discrimination in Real Time, Skylink Flight 847. Within minutes, industry insiders were following the developing story. Mitchell pulled out her radio again. Captain, passenger is non-compliant, requesting immediate ground security assistance. Copy. Ground crew is standing by. Kesha spoke for the second time, her voice steady despite the public humiliation. Ma'am, I understand you're following what you believe are protocols, but I'd suggest verifying my passenger status before taking irreversible action. Irreversible? Mitchell's voice rose with incredulity. Lady, the only thing irreversible here is your behavior. You think because you bought an expensive outfit and got your hands on a first-class ticket somehow, you can disrupt an entire flight? The elderly woman in pearls leaned forward. Young lady, in my day, parents knew how to travel with children properly. This display is absolutely shameful. More phones appeared. The incident was being documented from multiple angles. Facebook live stream started. Instagram stories began uploading. The shocker flight drama was beginning to trend locally, but Kesha remained unnaturally calm. She wasn't arguing, wasn't raising her voice, wasn't making demands. Her composure was almost unsettling, like someone who knew something the rest of the cabin didn't. Baby Zoe had finally quieted, seemingly responding to her mother's steady heartbeat. The infant's dark eyes looked around the cabin with the innocent curiosity that should have charmed fellow passengers. Instead, it seemed to irritate them more. 10 minutes, Mitchell announced with finality. Security will be here in 10 minutes, and this situation will be resolved one way or another. Kesha kissed Zoe's forehead gently and whispered something too quiet for the recording phones to capture. But her eyes held a knowledge that made the smartest observers suddenly uncomfortable. Something was about to change. Captain Derek Williams strode through the first-class cabin, his gold stripes catching the overhead lights. 22 years of commercial aviation had taught him to project absolute authority in passenger conflicts. What's the situation here, Sandra? Williams' voice carried the weight of Federal Aviation Command. Mitchell straightened, energized by her captain's arrival. Sir, this passenger has been disruptive since boarding. Screaming child, refusing crew instructions, and now she's being argumentative about deplaning. Williams studied Kesha with practiced assessment. Young black mother, designer diaper bag, first-class seat, but his assumptions aligned with Mitchell's narrative. Ma'am, I'm Captain Williams. Federal aviation regulations require passenger compliance with crew instructions. The TikTok live stream exploded past 15,000 viewers. The college student filming whispered breathlessly to her audience. The captain is here now. This is getting serious. Comments poured in. She's about to get arrested. Captain looks mad. Bye, Felicia. Hope they ban her from flying. Kesha adjusted baby Zoe in her arms, checking her phone discreetly. 8 minutes until departure deadline. 8 minutes until what? Williams demanded, his patience already thin. Ma'am, whatever schedule you think you're keeping, it doesn't override federal aviation safety protocols. From the galley area, 2 federal air marshals emerged. Plain clothes but unmistakable to anyone who knew the signs. Their presence escalated the situation from passenger service issue to potential security threat. Air Marshal Rodriguez approached cautiously, hand positioned near his concealed weapon. Captain, what's the nature of the disturbance? Passenger non-compliance, Williams replied curtly, refusing to deplane after crew assessment of disruptive behavior. The business passenger typing on the aviation forum paused to capture photos. His post was gaining traction among industry professionals. 200 shares, 847 comments growing by the minute. Mitchell sensed her moment of triumph approaching. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced over the cabin intercom, "we apologize for the delay caused by an uncooperative passenger. We expect to resolve this situation momentarily." The announcement triggered a wave of passenger frustration. Voices rose throughout the cabin. "Just throw her off already. Some people have no consideration. I have a connection to make. This is ridiculous." The TikTok viewer count hit 25,000. Local news alerts pinged on phones across Nashville. Viral incident unfolding on Skylink Airways flight. Kesha remained seated. Baby Zoe now calm and curious about the surrounding commotion. Her composure was becoming almost eerie, like someone waiting for a predetermined moment. Air Marshal Johnson flanked Kesha's other side. "Ma'am, we need you to gather your belongings and come with us voluntarily." "I need exactly 5 more minutes to resolve this situation," Kesha said quietly. Williams scoffed. "You need 0 minutes. This is a federal aircraft under my command, and you're creating a safety hazard." The elderly woman in pearl spoke loudly enough for the cameras. "Captain, I've been flying for 60 years. This kind of entitled behavior is exactly what's wrong with air travel today." Multiple passengers nodded agreement. The narrative was set: disruptive mother versus professional crew maintaining safety standards. But the business blogger noticed something others missed. His industry experience recognized subtle signs that didn't fit the narrative. He typed furiously, "Passenger shows 0 signs of actual distress. Too calm. Too controlled. Something else happening here." Kesha's phone buzzed insistently. The caller ID flashed briefly. Skylink corporate emergency line. She declined the call again. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. "Who keeps calling you?" "Your baby daddy can't override federal aviation law from the ground." The insult drew approving chuckles from nearby passengers. The businessman in the expensive suit raised his phone higher, ensuring he captured Mitchell's authority. 6 minutes until mandatory departure," Williams announced, checking his watch. "Ground security is boarding now." Through the aircraft windows, passengers could see airport security vehicles surrounding the plane. Emergency lights flashed. The situation had escalated beyond simple passenger removal. The TikTok live stream reached 32,000 viewers. Flight incident was trending nationally. Screenshots spread across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, showing the confrontation from multiple angles. Ground security officers boarded through the forward galley, their equipment jingling ominously, restraints, radios, cameras, everything needed for forcible passenger removal. "Ma'am," the lead security officer announced, "by order of the flight captain and federal air marshals, you're being removed from this aircraft. Please comply voluntarily." Kesha looked around the cabin slowly, taking in the recording phones, the hostile faces, the overwhelming authority arrayed against her. Baby Zoe gurgled softly, reaching toward the shiny security badge. 4 minutes, she said quietly. William's face flushed with anger. "You have 0 minutes. Officers, please escort this passenger and her child from the aircraft immediately." The security team moved closer. Passengers leaned forward, phones ready to capture the dramatic removal. The TikTok viewer count hit 38,000. But something in Kesha's eyes made the smartest observers pause. She wasn't panicking, wasn't pleading, wasn't preparing to resist. She was waiting. Air Marshal Rodriguez hesitated. "Ma'am, if you have some kind of legitimate concern or documentation, now would be the time to Rodriguez." Williams cut him off sharply. "We don't negotiate with disruptive passengers. Remove her now." Mitchell stepped forward triumphantly. "This is exactly why we have security protocols. Some people think they can manipulate situations with fake emergencies and social media theater." The cabin erupted in approval. Passengers applauded Mitchell's firm stance. Comments on the live stream celebrated the crew's professionalism. Kesha kissed baby Zoe's forehead and whispered something inaudible. Then she reached for her phone with deliberate calm. 3 minutes, she said. "Time's up," Williams declared. "Officers, proceed with removal." As security moved to physically restrain her, Kesha pressed a single contact in her phone and activated the speaker. The call connected immediately. "Hi, honey," she said softly into the phone. "I'm having some trouble on your airline." The voice that answered made Captain Williams' blood freeze in his veins. Which aircraft, sweetheart? I'll handle this personally. Williams recognized that voice immediately. Every Skylink Airways captain knew that voice. It belonged to the man who signed their paychecks. Kesha's response was gentle, almost conversational. Flight 847 First Class. The crew is being creative with customer service. The phone speaker crackled with barely controlled fury. I'm Marcus Thompson, Chief Executive Officer of Skylink Airways. Everyone on that aircraft needs to step back from my wife immediately. The cabin fell silent except for baby Zoe's soft cooping and the distant hum of airport ground equipment. Mitchell's face went white as understanding crashed down like a tidal wave. Williams staggered backward, his authority crumbling in real time. The TikTok livestream exploded past 45,000 viewers as comments went absolutely insane. Plot twist. She's the CEO's wife. They're so fired. Holy security officers stepped away from Kesha like she'd become radioactive. Marcus Thompson's voice continued through the speaker, ice cold and terrifying. Captain Williams, Miss Mitchell, I'll be reviewing this incident personally. And I do mean personally. Kesha remained perfectly calm, gently rocking baby Zoe as 180 passengers and crew members stared in shock. 2 minutes until departure, honey, she said sweetly into the phone. Cancel the departure, Marcus replied. We have bigger problems to address first. The woman they tried to remove owned the airline, and everyone had just watched it happen live. The silence in the cabin was suffocating. 180 passengers and crew members stared at Kesha Thompson as if she'd just revealed herself to be an alien. Baby Zoe gurgled happily, oblivious to the corporate earthquake her mother had just triggered. Marcus Thompson's voice continued through the phone speaker, each word carrying the weight of absolute authority. Kesha, are you and Zoe physically safe? We're fine now, she replied calmly, though Miss Mitchell did slap me in front of everyone when Zoe was crying. The admission hit the cabin like a lightning strike. Passengers who'd been recording suddenly realized they documented the assault of their airline's CEO's wife. Phones trembled in guilty hands. Captain Williams found his voice first, though it cracked with desperation. Mr. Thompson, sir, this is Captain Williams. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Marcus's voice cut through Williams like a blade. Captain, I'm watching the live stream right now. 47,000 people just witnessed my wife being assaulted by your crew. The TikTok stream had indeed exploded to 47,000 viewers. The college student filming could barely hold her phone steady as comments flooded in faster than human eyes could process. The CEO's wife. Everyone's getting fired. This is legendary. Flight attendant is toast. Plot twist of the century. Mitchell backed against the galley wall, her face cycling through disbelief, terror, and desperate denial. This has to be some kind of joke. She's just a passenger with a screaming baby. Miss Mitchell, Marcus's voice carried deadly calm. You just called my wife just a passenger after physically assaulting her. Please continue. I'm recording this conversation for our legal team. The business blogger typing on the aviation forum stopped mid-sentence. His post had exploded to 2,147 shares as industry insiders realized they were witnessing corporate history. He deleted his original narrative and started typing frantically. Breaking. Skylink Airways crew assaults CEO's wife on livestream. Air Marshal Rodriguez slowly raised his hands, backing away from Kesha. Ma'am, Mrs. Thompson, we were responding to crew reports. We had no knowledge of your identity. Of course you didn't, Kesha replied gently, adjusting Zoe's blanket. That was rather the point, wasn't it? How passengers are treated when crew members make assumptions based on appearance. William scrambled for damage control. Sir, Mr. Thompson, if we could discuss this privately, I'm sure we can resolve privately. Marcus's laugh was harsh. Captain, 47,000 people are watching this conversation live. The time for privacy ended when your crew decided to assault my wife in front of an audience. The elderly woman in pearls, who'd been applauding Mitchell's authority moments earlier, sank into her seat. Her previous comments about entitled behavior had been captured on multiple live streams, and she was beginning to understand the implications. Kesha opened her carry-on bag and retrieved the platinum card she'd hidden earlier. But this wasn't just any airline executive card. It was a custom-designed ownership verification with Mrs. Marcus Thompson, first family embossed in gold lettering. She held it up for the camera still recording. The cabin erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Several passengers covered their faces, realizing their recorded comments would be linked to their social media profiles. "Honey," Kesha said into the phone, "should I mention the merger announcement?" Marcus paused, and his response carried strategic calculation. "Not yet, sweetheart. Let's see how they handle the next few minutes first." Mitchell's desperation peaked. "This is impossible. I've worked for Sky Inc. for 8 years. I would know the CEO's family." "Would you?" Kesha asked quietly. "Have you ever seen photos of Marcus's wife and daughter? Has the company shared our personal information with crew members?" The question hung in the air unanswered because the answer was obvious. Skylink Airways, like most major corporations, carefully protected executive family privacy. Captain Williams pulled out his radio with shaking hands. "Ground control, this is Flight 847. We need to delay departure indefinitely. We have a situation requiring corporate intervention." Ground control's confused voice crackled back. "Flight 847, please clarify situation. We show security response in progress." Williams looked at Kesha helplessly. She nodded toward her phone. "Ground control," Marcus's voice took over. "This is Marcus Thompson, CEO of Skylink Airways. Cancel all security responses to Flight 847 immediately. I'm handling this matter personally. Copy that, Mr. Thompson. All units standing down." The TikTok live stream reached 52,000 viewers. Local news vans were racing toward the airport. Our Skylink scandal was trending nationally alongside Hashflight incident, but the real shock came when Kesha activated a video call on her phone. The screen showed a boardroom full of executives all watching the cabin drama in real time. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the cabin, "meet Skylink Airways executive leadership team. They've been watching this entire incident unfold." The camera panned across the boardroom, showing faces of corporate officers, legal counsel, and federal aviation liaison. Their expressions ranged from shock to fury to professional damage control mode. Marcus appeared on screen, a distinguished black man in an expensive suit, clearly accustomed to command. His eyes burned with a controlled rage as he surveyed the cabin. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his voice carrying across the first-class section, "you physically assaulted my wife in front of 54,000 witnesses. Federal law defines assault on aircraft as a felony with mandatory prison time." Mitchell's legs nearly gave out. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't know. I was following safety protocols." "Safety protocols?" Marcus's eyebrows rose. "Show me the regulation that authorizes crew members to slap passengers holding infants." She couldn't because no such regulation existed. The business passenger who'd been supporting Mitchell earlier frantically deleted his social media posts, but screenshots had already been captured and shared thousands of times. Captain Williams tried one final appeal. "Sir, emotions were high, mistakes were made, but surely we can handle this through internal channels." "Internal channels?" Marcus cut him off. "Captain, this incident is being investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Justice. Internal channels are no longer an option." He gestured to someone off camera. "Our legal team is already preparing federal charges, assault, battery, civil rights violation, and child endangerment." Kesha spoke for the first time in several minutes, her voice carrying across the silent cabin. "Marcus, should I tell them about the security footage?" A new voice entered the conversation. Skylink's head of legal appeared on the video call. "Mrs. Thompson, federal regulations require all aircraft incidents to be recorded. We have complete documentation from multiple camera angles. The implications hit like a tsunami. Not only had the assault been witnessed by thousands online, but it was also captured in high definition by federal aviation cameras." Mitchell slumped against the galley wall. Her 8-year career was over. Her professional certifications would be revoked. Criminal charges were inevitable, but Marcus wasn't finished. "Captain Williams, in your 22 years with Skylink, how many discrimination complaints have been filed against your crews?" Williams' face went ashen. "Sir, I don't have those numbers readily available." "I do," Marcus replied coldly. 17 complaints in the past 5 years, all quietly settled, all buried by corporate. Today's incident ends that pattern permanently. The revelations stunned the cabin. Skylink Airways had been covering up discrimination for years, and today's live-streamed assault had finally exposed the systemic problem. The TikTok viewer count hit 58,000. National news outlets were breaking into regular programming. Our Eddie Skylink assault was trending globally. Air Marshal Rodriguez spoke carefully. "Mr. Thompson, sir, we were responding to crew reports. We followed standard protocol for disruptive passenger situations." "Standard protocol for what?" Marcus demanded. "For a mother traveling alone with an infant. For a passenger who never raised her voice, never made demands, never resisted crew instructions." The marshals had no answer because there was no justifiable answer. Kesha kissed baby Zoe's forehead and looked directly into the TikTok camera. "For everyone watching this, remember that assumptions can destroy lives. Today, nearly 60,000 people witnessed what happens when prejudice meets accountability. The college student filming could barely breathe. This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. The CEO's wife just got assaulted by his own employees on live TV. Marcus's voice carried final authority. Flight 847 will remain grounded until every passenger deplanes and this aircraft is cleared for federal investigation. Miss Mitchell and Captain Williams, you're suspended immediately pending criminal charges." Mitchell finally broke, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Mr. Thompson, I have a family, a mortgage. I made a mistake." "You made a choice," Kesha corrected gently. "Choices have consequences. Today, those consequences are very public." The video call revealed more executives entering the boardroom, federal investigators, aviation attorneys, crisis management specialists. The full weight of corporate and federal power was mobilizing in response to one viral assault. Marcus addressed the cabin directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed something that happens far too often in aviation. Discrimination based on assumptions. The difference today is that everyone saw it, everyone recorded it, and everyone will remember it." Baby Zoe chose that moment to laugh, a pure, innocent sound that cut through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. "The merger announcement can wait," Marcus said, looking at his wife with obvious love and admiration. "We have more important work to do first." Kesha smiled at the camera, her dignity intact despite everything she'd endured. Change happens when power confronts prejudice publicly. Today, 60,000 people learned what real accountability looks like. The aircraft doors opened as federal investigators boarded, cameras flashing, documentation beginning. The woman they'd tried to remove now owned their futures, and the whole world was watching. The boardroom video call transformed into a federal tribunal as investigators, attorneys, and aviation officials joined the conference. What had started as a family travel day was now a full-scale corporate crisis response, witnessed by 63,000 live-stream viewers. Marcus Thompson's voice carried the weight of absolute corporate authority. "Before we address individual consequences, let's establish the facts. Skylink Airways generated $4.2 billion in revenue last year. Customer satisfaction ratings 91% overall." He paused, letting the numbers sink in. "Today's incident threatens our operating certificates, insurance coverage, and federal contracts worth approximately $800 million annually." Federal Aviation Administration investigator Sarah Carter appeared on the video call from Washington. "Mr. Thompson, preliminary review indicates multiple violations of CFR Title 14, Section 121, feet out of 80 regarding passenger safety and crew conduct." Captain Williams, still standing in the aircraft aisle, tried to maintain some dignity. "Sir, with respect, Miss Mitchell's actions don't reflect standard Skylink protocols, don't they?" Marcus cut him off sharply. "Legal, please share Captain Williams' crew complaint history with everyone watching." Skylink's head legal counsel, David Park, consulted his tablet with clinical precision. "Captain Williams has commanded crews involved in 7 discrimination complaints over 8 years. Average settlement per incident, $250,000. The number hit the cabin like a physical blow. Williams had cost the company nearly $2 million in covered-up discrimination cases, and now 70,000 people knew it. "Miss Mitchell," Marcus continued, his voice growing colder, "your employment record shows 3 previous incidents involving passengers of color. All resulted in corporate interventions and sensitivity training that you clearly ignored completely." Mitchell's voice cracked with desperation. Mr. Thompson, those were different situations. This passenger was genuinely disruptive with her screaming baby. Was she? Kesha interrupted quietly, still cradling baby Zoe with maternal grace. Marcus, should I play the complete cabin audio recording for everyone? Every face in the aircraft went pale. Federal regulations required complete audio documentation of crew-passenger interactions, and they'd all forgotten about the permanent record. Marcus nodded to someone off camera. Legal. Cue the audio recording from initial boarding through the assault incident. The aircraft speakers crackled as the damning timeline played back chronologically. Mitchell's voice. Control your screaming brat or I'll have security remove you both. The sharp crack of flesh meeting flesh. Mitchell. Some people don't know how to travel appropriately. Mitchell. People like you always try to upgrade illegally. I know every trick, Mitchell. Your baby daddy isn't going to save you from federal aviation regulations. Each recorded phrase built a devastating case of premeditated discrimination and assault. The TikTok audience, now at 67,000 viewers, listened in shocked silence as the evidence mounted. Captain Williams slumped against a seatback. The audio evidence was undeniable, and his vocal support of Mitchell's actions made him legally complicit in federal crimes. Federal investigator Carter continued her systematic assessment. Mr. Thompson, we're looking at potential violations under U.S. Code Title 49, Section 46504, interference with flight crew members. However, the crew appears to be the primary aggressor here. Absolutely correct, Marcus replied with legal precision. Our legal team has identified federal charges, including assault under federal jurisdiction, civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, and child endangerment in the presence of an infant. Air Marshal Rodriguez, who'd remained silent during most of the revelation, finally spoke carefully. Sir, we responded to crew reports in good faith. We had no knowledge this was discrimination rather than legitimate safety concern. Marcus's expression softened slightly toward the federal agents. Agent Rodriguez, air marshals follow established protocols based on crew assessments. However, those protocols require independent verification of crew claims before escalating to physical force. He gestured to legal counsel Park. David, what's our comprehensive liability exposure if this incident goes to federal court with full media coverage? Park consulted multiple tablets, his calculations visible to the boardroom cameras. Conservative estimate 15 to 25 million in punitive damages given the viral nature and documented emotional distress. That's before considering class action potential from previous victims coming forward. The business blogger in Seat 3C had switched from industry forum to Twitter, where his real-time updates were being retweeted thousands of times per minute. His latest post, Skylink Airways CEO's wife assaulted by crew on livestream. Federal investigation underway. Stock price down 8% in after-hours trading. The financial implications were staggering and immediate. Marcus addressed the entire aircraft through the speaker system with commanding authority. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed corporate accountability in real time. Miss Mitchell and Captain Williams are terminated immediately. Effective now. Mitchell's anguished scream echoed through the cabin. You can't fire me for following established safety protocols. Safety protocols? Kesha asked with devastating calm, her voice carrying maternal authority. Miss Mitchell, please cite the specific federal regulation that authorizes crew members to slap passengers holding infants. Complete silence. Mr. Park, Marcus continued with corporate efficiency. Please outline immediate consequences for both terminated employees. Legal counsel consulted his comprehensive notes. Miss Mitchell faces federal assault charges with mandatory minimum sentence of 6 months imprisonment under federal aviation law. Captain Williams faces charges of enabling assault and willful failure to protect passenger safety. The severity of criminal consequences hit both employees like physical blows. Furthermore, Marcus continued relentlessly. Both employees forfeit all benefits, pensions, and insurance coverage under our zero-tolerance discrimination policy. Professional certifications will be revoked by the FAA within 72 hours. Captain Williams found his voice one final time. Desperation clear. Sir, 22 years of dedicated service to this airline. 22 years of systematically enabling discrimination, Marcus corrected with brutal honesty. Your service record shows a documented pattern of protecting crew members who violated passenger rights repeatedly. The TikTok live stream reached 71,000 viewers as major news outlets picked up the story. Skylink accountability was trending globally alongside hashtag corporate justice and airline discrimination. Federal investigator Carter outlines systematic next steps. Mr. Thompson, the Department of Transportation requires immediate implementation of enhanced crew training and comprehensive passenger protection protocols across all Skylink properties. Already in development, Marcus replied efficiently. Effective immediately, Skylink Airways implements the Family Protection Protocol. Any crew member who physically contacts a passenger without direct safety justification faces immediate termination and federal charges. He clicked to a detailed presentation slide visible to the boardroom cameras. New mandatory training requirements, 40 hours of bias awareness, advanced de-escalation techniques, and comprehensive federal passenger rights education. Failure to complete successfully results in automatic certification loss. The scope of systematic reform was unprecedented in commercial aviation history. Miss Mitchell, Marcus addressed his former employee directly. You'll be escorted from this aircraft by federal marshals and formally charged with assault in federal court. Your discriminatory actions were witnessed by 71,000 people and permanently recorded by federal aviation cameras. Mitchell's legs gave out completely. Security officers moved to support her as the full weight of consequences crashed down. Captain Williams, your termination is effective immediately. Federal investigators will systematically review every flight you've commanded for potential civil rights violations over your entire career. Williams nodded numbly, understanding his aviation career was permanently over. But Marcus wasn't finished with comprehensive systemic change. Legal announced our new comprehensive passenger Bill of Rights. Park read from extensively prepared documents. Skylink Airways implements immediate passenger protections. Crew members cannot physically contact passengers without direct safety justification. All crew interactions must be recorded and reviewed by federal oversight. Discrimination complaints bypass local management completely and report directly to federal civil rights enforcement. The reforms went far beyond current industry standards, setting new benchmarks for passenger protection across commercial aviation. Air Marshal Rodriguez stepped forward respectfully. Mr. Thompson, what's the new protocol for federal air marshals in potential discrimination situations? Excellent question, Agent Rodriguez. You and Agent Johnson will receive comprehensive additional training on recognizing crew-initiated discrimination versus legitimate passenger threats. Marcus's approach emphasized systematic education over punitive punishment for law enforcement who'd followed established but flawed protocols. The college student filming on TikTok could barely contain her excitement. 73,000 people are watching the most epic corporate accountability moment in aviation history. This CEO just fired his own employees for discriminating against his wife. Federal investigator Carter concluded her preliminary assessment. Mr. Thompson, Skylink Airways' immediate response exceeds all federal requirements for discrimination incidents. The Department of Transportation will use this comprehensive approach as a model for industry-wide reform. Marcus looked directly at the cabin cameras, addressing the massive online audience. Today proves definitively that discrimination has real consequences, public consequences, permanent consequences. He turned to Keisha with obvious love and respect. Sweetheart, are you ready to complete your trip? Keisha smiled, kissing baby Zoe's forehead tenderly. Actually, I think we'll take a different flight. This aircraft needs time to recover from today's lessons. The irony was perfect. The CEO's wife choosing not to fly on her husband's airline after being assaulted by his employees. Understood completely, Marcus replied with supportive love. Our corporate jet will be ready in 30 minutes. As federal marshals escorted Mitchell and Williams from the aircraft in restraints, passengers sat in stunned silence. Their phones had captured history, but they'd also documented their own complicity in cheering discrimination. The woman they'd assumed was entitled had owned the airline all along, and the whole world had learned what real power looked like when used for justice. Within 4 hours, Skylink Airways underwent the most comprehensive transformation in aviation history. Federal marshals escorted Mitchell and Williams through the terminal in handcuffs. Their disgrace captured by news crews from 6 major networks. Mitchell's perp walk became iconic. The flight attendant who'd slapped a CEO's wife now faced federal prosecution. Her mug shot, released within hours, showed a woman whose 8-year career had ended in criminal charges and industry blacklisting. Williams followed in identical shame, his captain's stripes stripped before he reached the police car. 22 years of aviation authority reduced to federal defendant status, witnessed by millions online. The TikTok live stream, which had reached 89,000 viewers at its peak, became the most watched corporate accountability moment in social media history. The college student who'd filmed it gained 2.3 million followers overnight, but the real change happened systematically and immediately. Skylink Airways emergency board meeting convened within 2 hours. Marcus Thompson addressed shareholders via live stream, choosing transparency over damage control. Today's incident revealed systemic problems we can no longer ignore or settle quietly. Skylink Airways will become the industry standard for passenger dignity and crew accountability. The Family Protection Protocol launched across all Skylink flights within 24 hours. New signage appeared in every aircraft. Every family belongs here. Respect first. Verification always. Crew training began immediately. Skylink contracted the Southern Poverty Law Center and no AACP to develop bias awareness programs. Failure to complete training within 30 days resulted in automatic termination. The Passenger Bill of Rights became federal law within 6 months, sponsored by senators who'd watched the viral incident. The Thompson standards required all U.S. airlines to implement similar protections. Federal Aviation Administration investigator Sarah Carter released preliminary findings that shocked the industry. Skylink Airways incident represents systemic discrimination patterns across commercial aviation. Immediate industry-wide reform mandatory. Mitchell's federal trial began 3 months later. The prosecution's evidence was overwhelming. 89,000 witnesses, multiple camera angles, recorded audio, and federal aviation documentation. She received the maximum sentence, 18 months federal prison plus 5 years probation. Williams faced separate federal charges for enabling assault and violating passenger safety protocols. His conviction ended not just his career, but his pension, benefits, and industry reputation permanently. The financial impact was immediate and decisive. Skylink's stock initially dropped 11% but recovered within a week, as investors recognized the company's proactive response. Competitors scrambled to implement similar reforms, fearing their own viral incidents. Corporate clients flocked to Skylink Airways specifically because of the Thompson standards. Business travelers, particularly women and families of color, chose the airline that had demonstrated real accountability. Revenue increased 23% within 6 months. Customer satisfaction among diverse travelers reached 97%, the highest in industry history. Air Marshals Rodriguez and Johnson underwent additional training and became advocates for recognizing crew-initiated discrimination. Their testimony helped reform federal law enforcement protocols on aircraft. The business blogger's real-time coverage earned him a Pulitzer Prize nomination. His documentation of systemic discrimination and immediate corporate accountability became required reading in business schools. But the most meaningful change was cultural. The phrase "people like you" disappeared from Skylink vocabulary. Crew members began interactions with, "How can I help your family travel comfortably?" Chen, the college student who'd lived, streamed the incident, used her viral fame to launch a civil rights documentary series. Her first film, 35,000 FT Discrimination in the Sky, won multiple awards and sparked federal legislation. The incident inspired the Airline Accountability Act, requiring public reporting of all discrimination complaints and mandatory bias training across the industry. No more quiet settlements. Transparency became legally mandated. Most importantly, families traveling with children reported dramatically improved experiences. The assumption shifted from problematic passengers to customers deserving assistance. Marcus and Kesha Thompson established the Family Travel Foundation, providing legal support for passengers facing airline discrimination. Within 2 years, they'd handled 847 cases and achieved 100% settlement rate. 6 months after the incident, Kesha received the No ARCP's Courage Award. Her acceptance speech was simple. Dignity shouldn't require wealth or power. Today it doesn't because everyone watched accountability happen in real time. The federal reforms spread internationally. European airlines adopted Thompson standards voluntarily. Asian carriers implemented family protection protocols. Global aviation culture shifted toward passenger dignity. Mitchell's assault conviction became a permanent cautionary tale in crew training worldwide. Every new flight attendant learned about the consequences of discrimination through her example. Williams' career destruction served similar purpose for pilots. Command authority never justified enabling crew discrimination. The aircraft where the incident occurred was retrofitted with advanced recording equipment and bias detection technology. It became Skylink's flagship for demonstrating industry-leading passenger protection. Baby Zoe, now walking and talking, traveled frequently with her parents. Flight crews competed to provide exceptional service to the family that had transformed their industry. The touching stories and real-life stories that emerged proved individual courage could create systemic change. Kesha's quiet strength in the face of public humiliation became a model for marginalized travelers everywhere. Aviation industry publications called it the Thompson Transformation, the moment commercial flight culture shifted from crew authority to passenger dignity. 2 years later, the Skylink Airways incident became Harvard Business School's most studied case in crisis management and corporate accountability. The moment when quiet dignity defeated public discrimination inspired a generation of business leaders. Kesha Thompson's calm response under assault became required viewing in conflict resolution courses nationwide. Her refusal to escalate violence while protecting her daughter demonstrated that true power comes from principle, not position. Mitchell never worked in aviation again. Her federal conviction for assaulting a passenger became a permanent barrier to any customer service role. She took a warehouse job in rural Tennessee. Her fall from authority complete and irreversible. Williams' pilot license revocation ended his career at 54. No airline would hire a captain who'd enabled crew assault. He became a cautionary tale whispered in aviation schools. Command authority without moral courage destroys everything. But the real legacy lived in systemic change. The Thompson standards became global aviation law. 17 countries adopted family protection protocols based on Skylink's reforms. Discrimination complaints across all airlines dropped 67% within 2 years. Chen's livestream generated 47 million total views across platforms. She leveraged her viral fame into a social justice documentary career with her latest film exploring everyday discrimination in service industries. The financial transformation was remarkable. Skylink Airways became the most profitable airline in America, with customer loyalty rates exceeding 94%. Diverse families specifically chose Skylink for travel, knowing their dignity was protected. Life stories like Kesha's proved that preparation, composure, and principles could overcome institutional prejudice. Her example showed millions of parents that they didn't have to accept public humiliation silently. These Black stories, particularly stories of quiet strength, triumphing over loud hatred, resonated across communities worldwide. Kesha's dignity under assault became a template for responding to discrimination with power rather than anger. Professional development programs cited her approach: strategic thinking over emotional reaction, systemic reform instead of personal revenge, using privilege constructively rather than destructively. The viral moment also inspired legislative action globally. The International Air Transport Association adopted passenger dignity standards based directly on Skylink's reforms. The United Nations referenced the incident in human rights discussions. Real-life stories like this demonstrate that individual courage can create institutional change. Kesha's maternal protection of baby Zoe, while enduring public assault, touched hearts across cultural boundaries. But perhaps the most meaningful impact was personal. Families of color no longer steeled themselves for airline confrontations. Children saw their parents' dignity protected by corporate policy rather than challenged by crew authority. The incident taught the world that discrimination has costs immediate, public, and permanent. But it also demonstrated that accountability creates opportunity for genuine progress. Today, baby Zoe travels frequently with her parents, welcomed by crews who compete to provide exceptional service. The child whose crying triggered discrimination now experiences aviation's new culture of family respect. Touching stories emerge daily of families protected by Thompson standards. Parents share videos of flight crews offering assistance instead of assumptions, help instead of hostility. Have you ever faced discrimination while traveling with your family? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters and change happens when parents speak truth together. If this story inspired you, please share it with someone who needs to see what's possible when dignity meets determination. Subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more inspiring tales of family strength, resilience, and triumph that prove our community's power is unstoppable. Hit that notification bell because every parent deserves respect regardless of who tries to shame them for loving their